fighting expert in the sense that I have a degree on it and struggling to find work elsewhere. But that is depressing and boring. You know what's not depressing and is cool actually? Hollow Knight. I'm gonna talk about Hollow Knight bosses and rank them. Uh, and you might say, Grace, isn't this a little bit out of your her wheelhouse? Like you're a writer. Most of these bosses have like either writing in lore or no, not very little writing in lore, and their characters are not communicated through a story very much, if not at all. And yeah, I'm doing this because I like these boss fights, and they're a lot of fun. So I'm going to rank them, starting with Gruzmother. Look, I don't have a lot of thoughts on Gruzmother. I used to forget her a lot, and then I watched a Drawfee video where they made a lot of jokes about Gruzmother, and honestly, that's the reason I remember Gruzmother at all. Um, I don't think it's bad that she's an unremarkable boss. It's a good baseline of like boss that does very little and it isn't super interesting, but is fun to fight. So you have confidence that you can beat this game in a reasonable amount of attempts, which you can't because Grandmother is not actually a reasonable indication of how hard it is. But you know, it's there to make you feel good because it's the first level. Next up, False Knight. I think a slightly better version of Grandmother. I like that the bosses aren't super hard in Hollow Knight right out of the gate, because that makes it very easy to make you want to give up. Fortunately, False Knight, like even if you're not good at video games when you first start this, like I wasn't, will only take like one or two tries to beat, and also has more advanced movements than Grandmother. So, you know, serves more of a purpose and is more fun. So that goes B tier. Next up, Hornet. Hornet is so I think most people who play Hollow Knight have a very special relationship with Hornet in that unless you're like one of those really good at video games and plays a lot of Dark Souls and also Metroidvania peoples, your first go at Hornet is going to take you like 15 attempts and make you maybe consider dropping the game forever. And then every other time you play the game, she's going to be piss easy and you're going to wonder why you ever had trouble with her. Which I do think is a testament to how good Hollow Knight is at training you to be better at that game. Because even when you go back with the same early game abilities, it's just way easier to read her and beat her. And also, I do think it's important that the game does establish that it is difficult up front. Like, Hornet is the last mandatory boss for a while in Hollow Knight. You can get around a lot of bosses in this, so they do need to have so before the game opens up, they do have to have like a gateway boss who's like, hey, this game is hard. You do have to be willing to like try a lot of times to beat a very difficult boss. And Hornet is very good at that. So that goes to A tier. Benchfly King, C tier. I like him all right. He's not super impactful. He's honestly more fun for the Zote cameo that happens afterwards. Massive Moss Charger. Why is this less difficult than Grandmother? Like, I like it conceptually. It's a funny idea. It adds texture to the game. Like, I do think that, like, I'm going to be ranking bosses higher in quality, but I think having a wide range of, like, different types of bosses and different levels of mechanical complexity is better. Like, I wouldn't want to have a game that's, like, 20 radiances. Like, I like that the variety is here, but on its own, it's a D tier boss. Brooding Malek. I guess B. I'm gonna put it above the bosses that aren't really that hard. Failed Champion. I think I'll put in A tier. Failed Champion is a bit annoying, and also the reason I've never been able to beat Pantheon of Hallownest, because he just takes all of my soul when I try to fight him. He's more fun on his own, but he annoys me in isolation. No Eyes. Creepy as shit. Not a very difficult boss. Incredible atmosphere, honestly. Next up, Mantis Lords. Mantis Lords are the first S tier. I really love Mantis Lords from like a game design perspective and sort of storytelling perspective, where essentially when you first meet Mantis Lords, they're like a very natural extension of the required path, even though they're technically right after the path stops being required. But also, you're going to keep doing them because obviously you're going to keep exploring the place you've been exploring so long. But also, they are like too difficult for your expected skill level at this point in the game. So they're essentially a boss you're expected to lose, and then on your way back, lose to. And then on your way back to them, you got Quirrell to pop in and be like, hey, you don't have to just bash your head against the wall. You can go to the nailsmith. And it's like a small way of saying, hey, if you're struggling with the boss, you don't just have to fight it over and over again. It's a Metroidvania. You will find a lot of power ups and explorations. You can go do stuff. You can go do a bunch of stuff and like learn and find and get better at the game and come back later. And then the boss will be more fun. But then there's also the layer that when you go to for the nailsmith and City of Tears, you get stuck there. So depending on whether you are like gonna rack up geo to tram out of there, or you're gonna go all the way up through the Soul Sanctum, you're sort of in a point where you're stuck in a certain location for most of the game, and the entire way because you were sent here with the explicit goal of get strong enough so that you can fight the Mantis Lords, you spend this entire section of this game, however long it is, with the Mantis Lords as your goal. So like it's a very strong intrinsic motivation. You may not know what the ultimate goal of this game is, but you do know that your current goal is to kill those fucking Mantis Lords. I love the Mantis Lords, they're great. Umu, first S tier. He's invulnerable most of the fight. When he's vulnerable, he doesn't do anything, and you can't make him vulnerable in any, or them vulnerable in any way whatsoever. You just have to wait for Quirrell to do it. And the attack patterns aren't even that complex. You just sort of wait for Quirrell to show up so you can continue the fight. Elder Who, he's fun. I liked him. Soul Warrior. I wasn't sure if he counted as a boss. I was thinking of him more as a mini boss. I think like low B, high C. Like I don't really think of him as a boss. He's just sort of a mini boss. He makes the Soul Sanctum more engaging, but he's not really much on his own. Soul Master, I quite like. I have a lot of fun playing with it, playing against him. It's really fun to weave in and out of his projectiles, and it's another one of those very good examples of Hollow Knight being a lot more difficult the first time you play, and then it's like you can see the matrix when you finally play again. But unlike Hornet, Soul Master, at least in my opinion, isn't making you quit the game difficult at first. Like even when you take a few, or at least I am speaking from my subjective experience. Even when I took a few times to get Soul Master to beat Soul Master originally, it was not like anywhere near or as frustrating or as many times as it took for Hornet. Soul Tyrant, yeah, just more fun Soul Master, but it's an upgraded Soul Master. But also by the time you get up to Soul Tyrant, you are much upgraded, so it's kind of just the same sort of experience as Soul Master. Watcher Knights, love these guys. Easy A tier. It's so much fun. They are very difficult. I love that you can just like hit a chandelier and kill one of them before the boss fight. It's so much fun to like slowly carve your way through a bunch of waves of enemies. I love that they're rhinoceros beetles. I like them. They're a lot of fun. The Collector is really interesting. I don't think he's quite as fun as some of the A tier fights, but he is a very interesting fight. Especially because like he's void and you can't get soul off of him. And it's just kind of like a whole lot of what the fuck is this thing? Dung Defender, a lot of fun. Like this is a very goofy fight, but it's also a very fun fight. Like he's a big beach ball in a big poop arena, except the poop is rendered cartoony enough that it's not disgusting. And he's a dung beetle, and it's fun. I like him. White Defender, about the same. I think most of the like fights are like about the same as their base stage. Fluke Marm, not very interesting. Again, I like that there's a bunch of mechanically different fights, but Fluke Marm is not super interesting. I like Crystal Guardian a lot. I think I might put him in A tier. I I love that you're not that he doesn't start fighting until you hit him on the bench. So for a while, you're not sure what sort of encounter this is. Is this a new NPC? Is this just environmental storytelling? And you hit him, and it's like, oh, this is a boss fight. That's a lot of fun. And he shoots lasers. I do love the Crystal Peaks atmosphere. It's a lot of fun. And Enraged Crystal Guardian's about the same. Zero. He's an edgelord, but he's a fun edgelord. I like him. Marmu. Okay, so complexity wise, he's like on the same level of Grozmother. I just think he's so much fun. Like, he's not a difficult or complex fight, but he is fun as hell. Traitor Lord. Also, wait, I should probably check if there's been a chat. There has not. For the record, I'm on a different computer than usual, so I won't be able to live check the chat unless. Yeah, I think I finally can. Never mind. But yeah, Trader Lord is fun. I don't know. I don't have super strong opinions on the strongest opinions on Trader Lord. I like there is the issue that it is like a sized up trader mantis unless you do Kloth's boss fight or not Kloth's boss fight, Kloth's whole story, in which case he gets a bit souped up. And personally, I always did Kloth's route, or maybe they patched it by the time I got to that, because like he does have different, or she does have different moves than just a normal trader mantis. I've heard like people say that if you don't do Kloth's route, she's just like a normal trader mantis but bigger. But again, I always did Kloth's route. But yeah, I do like that it's one of the only fights that capitalizes on you having the shade cloak, because it is very much like, it's gated by the shade cloak. It's one of the only fights that is, so it gets to do that, and it is a very tense, difficult fight. I think I'd probably put it. It's not as fun as Watcher Knights. I think I'd probably put it around 0. Galleon, another strong A tier. The thing is, like, all of the warrior dreams kind of revolve around like, oh, you've got this floating weapon, and I do sort of like the scythe bouncing around, but it does also kind of mean that like all of the warrior dreams, except for the ones that specifically go out of their way to be goofier, feel pretty similar. And my favorite floating weapon was Zero's like knives that shoot at you. So most of the other warrior dreams. Actually, come to think of it, it's really just Galleon that takes the whole. It's just a normal floating weapon. So Galleon just kind of feels like a weaker Zero, because I prefer Zero's fighting tick or moves, attacks, that sort of stuff. Next up, we're going for Nosk. So the build up for Nosk is better than Nosk. Like, Nosk, for the most part, is kind of just like a slightly different Brooding Malak. Like, the Brooding Malak jumps across the arena, Nosk runs. Brooding Malak shoots a bunch of infection in one area, Nosk shoots it all over, except there's more gaps to get between. Like, Nosk isn't interesting because like his own fight is fun. Nosk is interesting because the buildup where you're following another knight and you've seen a bunch of vessels littered around, so this actually feels believable. It doesn't feel like obviously just mimicking you. And because you've been so shrouded in mystery, you're like, oh my god, what is this thing? And the twist of like the knight's fucking head breaking and it turns into Nosk is fucked. Like, the environment and story building up to Nosk is very interesting, but Nosk as a boss just can't quite match that level of interest, unfortunately. Zote the Mighty. I think Zote the Mighty is like the epitome of the goofy bosses, because like, and I'm gonna get some slander here, Zod the Mighty sucks and is weak. I know, I'm violating the precepts of Zod. Uh, I I don't. I'm sorry, I haven't memorized all 100 precepts of Zod. I will atone, but like, it is very funny to have the entire arena and then build up to Zod, who the game has kind of been building up to this whole time as a joke figure, and then he's just so pathetic. It's a lot of fun. I'm partially putting him up in Espin a bit because Zod the Mighty is the greatest warrior to ever walk the lands. But yeah, I think Zod's funny. Grey Prince Zote. Uh, yeah, Grey Prince Zote is that comedy turned up to Zote actually as cool as he thinks he is. I love that when you kill Grey Prince Zote, Britta actually realizes, or Bretta actually realizes that like Zote isn't cool. Like you've actually killed her like fantasized image of Zote, which is hilarious. She's like, huh, is the Grey Prince does the Grey Prince seem like a bit of a loser to anyone else? And that's hilarious. I love that. And also, it's like again, it's like going the full mile with the tongue-in-cheek thing. Like Zote is still a very comedy character, but also they're actually capitalizing on all the fake buildup of him being the greatest weapon warrior to walk the lens, wielder of light, and speaker of the 100 precepts. I It's been a bit since I played Hollow Knight, so I don't actually. Well, it hasn't been a bit since I played Hollow Knight. It's been a bit since I've like read the like dialogue in Hollow Knight because I just play through Hollow Knight a lot for like fun and relaxation. So I don't actually remember a lot of the like details from what Zote says. So I might be speaking heresy here. The Oblobbles. I think the Oblobbles and the God Tamer go around the same tier. They're both fun. I don't They're kind of like the Soul Warrior in the sense that I don't think of them like bosses as their own. They're a lot of fun mainly because like the Colosseum is a lot of fun and having these bigger enemies and like and like boss type enemies is really cool and adds a lot of tension and makes it more difficult but also a lot more fun, and that makes the Colosseum really good. Like I would put all the Colosseums in like S tier, but the bosses themselves feel a bit weak because they're made to be a piece of the whole. They aren't made to stand on their own, like the Watcher Knights or Hornet or any of the other main bosses. They are made to fit into the Colosseum, and they're very good at that. But it does mean that it's hard to be like, oh yeah, no, I love the Colosseum bosses strictly on their own. So Markov, how do I feel about Markov? Because, like, I remember getting annoyed at him a lot because, like, he is so much more difficult than all of the other Warrior Dreams. But also, that is kind of like what makes him fun and interesting. Like, it is like a lot of the ways that these bosses function, both in terms of like inter- both in terms of gameplay and narrative, because it's less about either of those and more about how we emotionally relate to the bosses, is the buildup. And the buildup of there's this one ledge you can't get in that you're gonna have that up to that you both need monarch wings, and then later, as it turns out, shade cloak, because there's that well of void running up, is this idea of like something out in the furthest edges of Kingdom's Edge, which is already described as the edge of the world. I love Kingdom's Edge so much. It's such a cool concept. It's so good at the like vibe of the world is actively falling apart. And like Markov even mentions he like says that he like finds himself at the world's edge, and that's so interesting. And I remember getting a lot more annoyed at his boss fight than I did at some others. But also the vibe is immaculate. I think, but also like once I was good enough, I did enjoy his fight. But also like it is a little annoying that he just has like the shield rotating, but also he's got the blades. I don't know. I have mixed feelings on Markov. I do think I'm probably going to put him at the top of the Warrior Dreams. Sentinel Hornet. Uh, weirdly, I think I'm gonna put Protector Hornet up in S tier and Sentinel Hornet in A tier. Because Sentinel Hornet is A tier. It's a lot of fun. I always love getting the chance to like rematch villains with, or not villains in this case, but rematch bosses within a game. And Sentinel Hornet is good at that, but it second fights are often like the weakest in terms of like narrative strength, both in like video games and in like not non-interactive mediums. Like when you see rival fights, the second one can often be the least interesting, just because we have this very ingrained idea of the rules of three of narrative significance. So on one hand, finally getting a chance to beat Hornet to fight Hornet again is really interesting, especially with like, oh, this is Hornet without holding herself back. She's got all her tools and tricks of the trade. But also, it doesn't serve quite as strong a narrative or like gameplay. It serves a stronger narrative purpose than original, but it doesn't serve as strong as like a gameplay purpose to influence you to like understand how you play the game. So it is a lot of fun, but I think that like Protector Hornet is better used within the fabric of the game, but also Sentinel Hornet is a lot of fun, and it was very fun to like finally fight her again. But like, for example, like something that I think Silk Song, and I'm not ranking the Silk Song bosses here, but I might on a future stream. But like something I like about the Silk Song bosses, or that I think Silk Song does better than this, is in that case, Lace does hit the rule of threes. You get fight one, you get fight two, and then fight three is kind of a subversion. Like again, I'll go into this more if and or when I do a Silk Song boss ranking here. But like you get to build on your relationship with between Hornet and Lace a lot more than you do between the Knight and Lace, and that's also partially because Hornet can actually talk, so she can develop like a relationship with Lace and Silksong, and the Knight can't because the Knight is an empty vessel. But like I don't know, it's fun, and it does bring a lot of the emotional context of you're rematching this important figure from throughout the game, but it also has the context of it's not capitalizing on the rule of threes, and the knight isn't doing any of the groundwork in this relationship. It's entirely you behind the computer screen versus Hornet. So that is inherently kind of limiting the relationship a little bit, which is kind of what rival or recurring boss fights rely on, the relationship between the main character and the rival. I don't know. Again, it's a really fun fight. It's still an A tier fight. I think I'm just rationalizing why I think Protector Hornet actually deserves to go an S above this, because the Sentinel Hornet is an A tier fight, but it doesn't play into like but it doesn't play into the fabric of the game as well as Protector Hornet does. Hive Knight. I like Hive Knight a lot. I do remember feeling like it was a little weird that the villain of the Hive was a knight, because like I feel like we all inherently understand that like it's the queen who's the knight, and like there are things I like about Hive Knight, like for example, his style or its style as more of a life agility focused fighter is very evocative of Hornets, and as we later find out, or as is initially implied by Hornet's name, and then is later revealed by Silksong, Hornet was also trained by the Hive. But also, like, I don't know, Hive Knight has the vibe of someone who would be like the first boss of an area, and then you eventually get to like a bigger boss who's like more unique. Like it feels like Hive Knight would be your soul warrior, and then the final boss of Hive would be like a soul master type. And you don't have that. And like narratively, the reason you don't have that is because the queen is dead as hell. And that's kind of like the tragedy of the Hive. But like, I don't know, I feel like maybe if they did some different things gameplay wise, they could convey that better. Like maybe there's an empty mid boss room like earlier in the game, and you're like, huh, I wonder why this is empty. And then the implication is that the mid boss had to migrate to being the final boss because the final boss died, or like I don't know, maybe Hive Knight is a mid boss, and then your final boss is just multiple Hive Knights, and the implication is, oh yeah, it's because it's because the queen is dead. And like I know also that Hive Knight was apparently not in the base game. By the time I eventually got to Hive Knight, it very much he was it was already there. So I guess I never experienced a version without Hive Knight versus version with Hive Knight. But like, yeah, Hive Knight's a very fun map fight, but it does leave the distinct impression that you're missing something. And then the next boss on the list is Gorb. I like Gorb. He's a shitpost boss. He's not difficult at all. He's a weird motherfucker, and like he's a weird motherfucker in the sense that like yeah, this does sort of imply like great some texture and different to like the world of Hollow Knight. Like a lot of people have connected Gorb to the God Tuner, which I think is interesting. But also, Gorb's fun in the original game is that he's just a weird motherfucker, and I do like that. Like he's not a hard boss, but it is fun, and it like I think another thing like with slightly goofier bosses is that if you have to fight them a bunch of times, the goofiness wears off and it becomes annoying. But because the goofier bosses are always on the easier side, you don't really have time for the goofiness to wear off. And that is again what Gorb is like. Broken Vessel, like Broken Vessel a lot. I'm thinking like high. I'm not sure I like it more than Watcher Knights. I'm probably gonna move Watcher Knights to S tier, honestly, because I do think I like Watcher Knights more than the Zotes, honestly. But yeah, I like Broken Vessel. It's a lot of fun. Uh, I am looking for where's Lost Kin. I think Lost Kin might be like it's very hard for me to separate Lost Kin and Broken Vessel in my head because like I had the Dream Nail by the time I went to Broken Vessel. So like you kill Broken Vessel, you go get Monarch Wings, and then Lost Kin is right there ready to fight. So they kind of blur together because every time I've played this game, which is a lot, how they sort of like are just right one after another. Or if I'm doing something else, I won't necessarily fight Lost Kin, but Lost King does feel like the most like broken its base fight in the whole game, which I don't know. It just kind of means that it's hard for me to evaluate them separately, but I do like them. The Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight's gonna be low A tier. Like the Hollow Knight has this issue where to get to the actual final boss, you have to get through most of the Hollow Knight's phases, and then dream nail him. And because the game doesn't just reset, it doesn't open with like Hornet holding open the Hollow Knight's mask, or start with Hornet stabbing the Hollow Knight's mask when you first walk in after you've gotten to the Radiance before. It means that the Hollow Knight can't be too difficult, or it'll be really annoying to fight him every single time you have to get to the Radiance. So it leads to the Hollow Knight on its own feeling very underwhelming as a boss fight. And I'm not the first person to mention this. And again, I do think they do this better with Silksong because they don't really do that at all. Like they have a similar fake out final boss thing, but it's reversed in a way that I think is very interesting narratively. And I do like how Silksong handles it a lot. Again, I will probably do a Silksong ranking stream at some point, and I'll probably have more things to say about that because Silksong has a stronger narrative than Hollow Knight. But yeah, I guess I'll put Hollow Knight in B tier. I understand why you're disappointing, but like, it's the title character of the game. Why is it so disappointing? And again, I know why, but like it's annoying that it's so disappointing. The Radiance. No one's surprised. This is an S tier. Radiance is a great fight. It's one of the only fights in the game that makes you really take advantage of every single movement ability. The buildup of challenge, and you're like, what am I supposed to challenge? Am I supposed to challenge the sun? And the answer is yes. You're challenging the fucking sun. And I do love. It's a very good fight. I don't have a lot to say beyond what other people have said. But yeah, Radiance is S tier. Grim on its own is already S tier. I love the way it feels like a dance. I love the way the fight feels like a dance. I love Grim's fucking attitude. I love the way he fucking bows to you. I love all of his he has such a strong mood, and the fight is so fun as like a back and forth dance. It's very unique, and it feels very strongly. It's got a great atmosphere. Grimm is like top three bosses. And then we hit Nightmare King Grimm. So I should add the disclaimer. I have beaten Nightmare King Grimm a few times, but this is where we have to get to the disclaimer that I'm not actually good at video games. I'm pretty good by like a normal person's standards at Hollow Knight specifically, but like there's a lot of but like good for a normal Hollow Knight player who like doesn't take the game too seriously but does try to get as much done as possible versus the real Hollow Knight diehards. Like I have to like I am mentally closer to a Hollow Knight diehard, but like skill wise, I'm more on the plane of like good for a normal player. Because I do kind of suck at video games sometimes. And Nightmare King Grimm is on that sort of threshold of where I think the problem is that I'm not good enough to properly appreciate this. And part of it is like you have to have Grimchild going into the fight. So it's essentially giving up some of your charms for one of the hardest fights in the entire game, which is frustrating. And again, I really like Grimm, and the way they make Nightmare King Grimm is just adding way more damage auras everywhere and making everything like harder to get into. And like I'm sure they designed Nightmare King first, but I don't know. It feels like you're artificially raising the stakes on artificially raising the difficulty on a strong boss that isn't necessarily like end game level more so than it is that Grimm is a weakening of a natural end game boss. I don't know. I know Nightmare King Grimm is fun, but he does frustrate me personally, and I am also just, I don't think, quite good enough to properly appreciate him. Oro and Mato, S tier. I like these guys. I like that you finally get to fight your Nail Master. I like Shio more because I love paint as like an aesthetic and like a fantasy thing. But yeah, Sly is the real nail sage I like, or the nail master I like. Sly is so much fun. He's kind of insane. I love that his fucking little sword throws him around and then he just turns into a fucking Sonic the Hedgehog spinning around with a fucking sword and hurting you. He's a lot of fun, but unlike Nightmare King Grimm, he's very much within my skill set. Sisters of Battle, also S tier. This might sound a bit hypocritical, and maybe it's just that the Sisters of Battle aren't quite as hard as Nightmare King Grimm, but like when it's within my skill level, I do appreciate like taking a boss I like and making it harder, especially because like they're not just adding artificial like extra damage areas around the Mantis Lords. It is essentially answering a question that the base fight asked, because the Mantis Lords is meant to get you up to speed. You fight one of them, and when you beat it, the other two are like, "All right, you're good enough," and you fight those two, and you fight those two, and then you beat them. But you never fight all three of them at once, so that implicitly asks the question: what if you fought them all at once? And that's what the Sisters of Battle are. And I don't know, because of how the Mantis Lords already worked, where they all had basically the same abilities, and the difficulty was just like being able to respond to multiple stimuli at once and being very aware of your surroundings, and also being able to influence your surroundings by like chipping away at one of them enough until one finally disappears, so you get to a lower difficulty. Like I don't know. I think that's a much more natural and fun way to build a normal boss up into a super boss than what Nightmare King Grimm does. But yeah, Sisters of Battle, S tier. I think they might actually they're not a better final boss. I might like them more as a super boss than the Radiants. Winged Nosk. Winged Nosk is even lower than normal Nosk. Where is normal Nosk? Yeah, normal Nosk is A tier. Yeah, Winged Nosk isn't going there. Like, it is nice to get like that 1 2 second fake out. It's just a weaker version of the original Nosk fake out, which was really all Nosk had going for it. And it's cool that he's got like a slightly different move, but that's just like instead of running at you, he flies at you, or it, or she, or however yeah, or whatever their pronouns are. I genuinely don't know. But yeah, Nosk, disappoint. I'm putting it down further at B. It's not that good. Pure wrestle again. This is, I think, a better way, a way of souping up a normal boss into a super boss. I like more than Nightmare King Grim, even though Pure Vessel is also super hard. I don't necessarily. I'm not sure I'd be the one to say whether or not it's harder than Nightmare King Grim, but I do love it, and it is hard in a way I like. Where like it, where again, this is just like this is a natural question, but like I don't know. It's sort of recoding a lot of the Hollow Knight's attacks that were infection based to have their own like pure nail based and soul based attacks. And I don't know. I think that does like I think that is a lot of fun and it's very interesting and it's very difficult, but it's also like I don't know. It's not just like everything's a damage area like Nightmare King Grim and you can only hit it occasionally and those occasions are really small. Like it there is more openings with the pure vessel and also yeah I just like the pure vessel more. Absolute radiance. So remember that thing I said about how I'm not actually good at video games. I'm just pretty good at Hollow Knight in specific because I played it a lot. I've never managed to fight the absolute radiance. I always fail at Pantheon of Hollowness before I get there. So that's an anticlimactic way to end. I'm ending on a fight that I cannot actually grade. So that's my tier list. I also do writing shows that are more heavily structured than these tier lists every Friday. This upcoming Friday, I'm going to be doing one about Witch Hat Atelier and context-based storytelling over conflict-based storytelling. So you might want to check that out if you're interested. I also last Friday did a video about Jax from the Amazing Digital Circus and the point of representation. So if that's something you're interested in, check those out. And otherwise, I will